Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. Today we've got more details about the massive ground war game mode in Call of Duty Modern Warfare and some other really interesting gameplay snippets and facts about the game. Most of it is thanks to an article from Game Informer, who got some exclusive hands-on time with the game at the Infinity Ward studio. Now, it's pretty hard to imagine a COD game with a 64-player game mode, and yet that's exactly what we're getting in the new Modern Warfare. When the game was first revealed, I did a breakdown and mentioned the brand new game mode called Ground War. Now, some players might be thinking, well, hold on, Ground War sounds familiar, and it's definitely featured in previous COD games, but this time around, it's quite different. In previous games, Ground War did have an increased player count up to around 18 players, but that's small fry, and this time, Infinity Ward are upping the ante in a big way and going after the Battlefield player base. In the new game, Ground War takes place on huge sprawling maps, something that COD has not really done ever before. During the gameplay reveal, we did see a 20v20 Conquest style map, and even that was a big step forward for Call of Duty. But when it comes to Ground War, we're talking about massive downtown city maps with skyscrapers and 64 players plus vehicles. What's even crazier than that is that while Ground War is 64 players, developers have said that they've been testing it with 100 players. Now that's a crazy amount, not just for a Call of Duty game, but even for a Battlefield game. Of course, because you can do 100 players doesn't mean that you should, and the reality is that the developers will have tested what they think will work right with Ground War. But even the fact that we're sat here talking about Call of Duty stepping in on Battlefield territory is a really big deal. Having 64 players is one thing, but what about those vehicles? Well, according to the playtests, the game mode features choppers, light tanks, APCs, as well as transport vehicles. The map featured 5 capture points, much like we saw on the 20v20 map, but the key point here is that all of these vehicles are player controlled, and that's just another worry for Battlefield. Did you ever think that you'd be controlling a tank in a Call of Duty game, let alone a chopper? I didn't, to be honest. That being said, Blackout from Black Ops 4 did have a player-controlled helicopter, so it's not like this would be the first time it's happened. The thing that Call of Duty seems to have this time around, though, is variety. And I wanted to recap on some of the player counts and modes that we already know about. There's a 2v2 gunfight mode, which is something that will be massively popular on Twitch and YouTube, even esports. I think it looks like a lot of fun. And then there's a 6v6 mode, which I imagine will be the most popular mode, classic COD. And then you've got the larger scale modes, such as 10v10 and 20v20. Lastly, you now have Ground War, which is hitting that 64-player mark. Alongside that, all the smaller modes are going to offer multiple game modes, so Domination, TDM, Free-for-all, etc. If it's variety that players wanted in a Modern Warfare setting, they're definitely going to get that. The only question on my mind, though, is how well these larger player modes will go down in the Call of Duty community and the fan base. As a Battlefield player, I love the idea, but with Call of Duty being known for closer combat, I do wonder if the typical COD fan is going to be put off by the larger scale modes. I don't think they will, I think they'll welcome it, but that remains to be seen. The important thing to remember, though, is that even on the larger maps, it's still Call of Duty. You can still use kill streaks and the maps have close combat areas as you would expect. But from what I've seen so far, it looks like they've pulled off something pretty impressive. But I'd love to get hands-on with the game to see how it actually plays. Speaking of maps, COD has taken a much more realistic approach to map design this time around. In a recent blog, the multiplayer design director, Jeff Smith, said that you can't build a symmetrical environment and make it real. Humans pick up patterns really quickly. And that's true. He goes on to say that they've got custom smaller maps and then slightly larger core maps and then the bigger medium maps and finally some really large scale maps. And when it comes to actual map design, though, the blog used the term taking grandma's plastic wrap off the furniture. Okay, and in essence that means that you can now climb, mantle and explore all over the map in places that you wouldn't expect to based on your knowledge of previous COD games. I think this is kind of harking back to like COD 4, when you could get in those interesting positions by climbing up a few places. But something that this also impacts is the classic 3-lane system that COD is well known for. Don't expect the maps to follow that same path this time around. A lot more design thought has gone into making the maps with this version of the game, and as such, they're going to be quite varied. And a large part of that comes down to the maps having a much bigger degree of interactivity, as I just mentioned. Perhaps in the more recent COD games, you'd be able to take one of the 3 available routes through the map and then get stuck in one corridor. But now though, because you'll be able to climb up through boxes, out of windows and flank enemies from different and unexpected angles, it might not sound a lot, but the way you move around the level seems to be a lot more free-flowing this time around. And I think that's a good thing. Smoke grenades are actually going to be pretty important too on the big maps, because in previous COD games you always tended to have smaller maps, so getting between areas was never a problem. Unless you count Blackout, of course. This time around though, smoke grenades are going to make a big difference, and they've extended the duration of them for that exact reason. On the bigger 64-player maps, smoke grenades will be your friend from moving to cover to cover. One other interesting thing that I read too was that recently, at one point in development of this game, there was a buddy system, which meant that you and a teammate could work together to help each other and climb up to hard to reach areas. If you did this, both of your players would go into a small animation, where one would boost the other up, but in the end it was removed because the developers felt that most players either wouldn't use it or it would be used intentionally to troll other players. In the end though, the map design itself gave players the ability to get to those areas themselves, so I guess it was the right call, although that does sound pretty cool. Now there were some more juicy snippets in that Game Informer article. The 2 teams that you play as we know, are called the Coalition and the Allegiance, and they're both meant to be large corporations, but supposedly the operators from the Coalition are based on Western forces and the Allegiance is Eastern military themed. You also unlock characters one by one, just like in Rainbow Six Siege. Each of them comes with their own introduction video. I do like that sort of thing, I have to admit. When it comes to cosmetic items for those operators, they're there too, but they're full conversions. One downside though is that you can't seem to change anything on an individual basis like some players might want to or expect. In terms of gameplay, the big levels are going to offer up something really different for snipers too. The developers felt that since forever, the COD games catered to SMG range, and so these big maps are going to change that up a bit. And this plays into the new weapon system too, because the bullets are projectiles. I think it would look a bit silly if you could hit scan someone with a sniper rifle from 500 meters away on one of these big 64-player maps. So I'm glad that they've reworked things and gone down this projectile route. Also, for those players worried about gunfight and thinking that it could be ruined by kill streaks, well, have no fear, kill streaks are disabled in that game mode. It makes perfect sense really, as that mode is just about close quarters 2v2 combat. Kill streaks don't fit into that design. Interestingly though, it does seem to be suggested that certain kill streaks will also require line of sight rather than just a simple map action. The new game also features a play of the game style highlight after a match instead of the final kill. And this is something that's been done before, so it's not exactly new, but some people prefer a final kill cam, others prefer a best play highlight like in Overwatch. I guess it really comes down to how well the system actually picks out the best play, because that's often a sticking point as to why players don't like it. Another cool snippet that the Game Informer article picked up on though was the ability to copy any class that killed you with a simple button press. This is similar to Copycat from Modern Warfare 2, but in that game, Copycat was a death streak if you were on a bad run. This time around it will be a feature. Not quite sure how that will work if you don't have either the weapons or attachments of that class, but that's going to be in there. Arguably, another big thing that's come out of the news this week for Modern Warfare is the news of dedicated servers. Yes, Infinity Ward and Activision have confirmed that the game will have dedicated servers on launch across PS4, Xbox and PC. Now COD has actually had dedicated servers for some time, so it might not seem huge news, but with cross-platform play being confirmed, there was a bit of doubt in my mind. But it's coming, no word on what tick rate those servers will be running at though, and it's going to be interesting to see how well these dedicated servers perform on 64-player maps that are full. And last of all for today, the writers from the Infinite Warfare campaign are back this time around, and there's already been a lot of talk about the single player campaign and its focus on realism, its moral grey areas. Call of Duty has had some shocking missions in the past, so it's no surprise that they're willing to put themselves out there. But you will be able to kill non-combatants during the story, but there might be a punishment for doing so. We're not sure exactly how this will work. You'll be expected to act as a tier 1 operator would. Based on what I saw in the mission at E3, the campaign is shaping up to be both highly intriguing, but also quite shocking. And that's about it for today, guys. The more that I hear about the new COD game, the more I get excited. It's been a long time since a Call of Duty game really caught my attention. I've got high hopes and I can't wait to get my hands on it during the beta in September, maybe even at Gamescom this year. And that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate your time watching these videos, and I hope that you find them entertaining and informative. And there it is. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like it, dislike it. Subscribe for more, hit the bell for all notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.